G'day, ZiggyD here with my first impressions review and a bit of a game overview for Marvel Heroes. Now, Marvel Heroes is an upcoming free-to-play action RPG MMO. It's been in development for a while now by Gazillion and it's been in this closed beta, which I've had a key to for a while now, thanks to one of my subscribers. But it's been under an NDA, so there hasn't really been too much coverage of it. Now, I saw some initial footage and stuff that had been put out by the developers, and I was interested, but I had some reservations about the way the game was being developed and things like that, which I've talked about in a previous video. However, I have been talking to people that have been playing in the closed beta, and they say that the game's improving by quite a lot, so I was pretty excited to try it out. After all, I'm a big fan of action RPGs, and the idea of having a stomp around as Iron Man or Spider-Man sounds pretty good to me. So I'm just going to jump straight into it with you. Let's talk about the aesthetics and the overall look of the game. It's pretty simple and clean looking. Not that impressive compared to other games, but in terms of action RPGs, I think it looks pretty good. The character models themselves are actually pretty good, and there's a lot of different costume variety and stuff like that for the different heroes, and I think they all look pretty good as well. Sort of in a similar vein there, they've all got their own unique voiceovers and lines, which can get a little bit repetitive at times, but most of the ones I've heard so far, like Spider-Man and things like that, Spider-Man especially, I thought really suits the character, and yeah, I thought fits in pretty well with the game. There's some of the skills look pretty impressive, although there seems to be a bit of repetition. Like I noticed one of Iron Man's attacks seems to be the exact same attack that another hero uses. Like it looks exactly the same, the effect. So there might be a little bit of double up there, but it might be something that improves over time anyway. So I mentioned costumes. Now, this was one of my biggest reservations about the idea of putting a Heroes game, like a Marvel Heroes game, with an action RPG. I've always felt a big part of an action RPG is, finding the better loot, putting on your character, and seeing this actual visual representation of your character increasing in power. Now, even in Marvel Heroes, the aesthetic changes you can make to your hero are limited to costumes, which is like a single item thing that you can either purchase through microtransactions or you can craft. They might also drop in the game as well, but if they do, it's a very rare sort of thing. But the actual gear pieces you find, like the new weapons, so for example, I'm playing Iron Man here. If I find new hand blasters or new boots or new helmets and things like that, I put them on and they increase my power and things like that. But they aren't represented on the character. You're just stuck with that costume that you've got, and if you get any other costume changes, then you can put those on too. Now, I think this costume idea really suits the Heroes thing good, because I reckon people will really get into the idea of getting the different costumes from like the comics or from the movies, or like even this like one far out Iron Man suit that was used in one comic way back when. You can get that and put that on your hero, and that looks pretty awesome. But for an action RPG fan, I think not having your gear represented on your character is a bit of a letdown, but it's one sort of little thing, I think, that personally bothers me, might not bother everyone, so you can sort of move on from that. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, sort of in a similar vein, was the actual itemization. Now, I was expecting itemization to be pretty bad, based on that I thought this game overall would be pretty basic, but I'm actually pretty impressed with how it actually works in the actual game. So the stats on them are pretty basic. You've got like attack power, defense power, and things like that, and health, extra gold, extra experience, and things like that. Just sort of your basic action RPG stats. But they've also got some like plus skill level stuff in there as well, which actually makes it pretty fun to play around with and pretty interesting. For example, this is a good example here. I think I got a belt pretty early on that gave me one level in this leap slam ability that I wouldn't be able to get for like another 4 or 5 levels. So I was something like level 4, and this is a level 8 ability. So I got this one belt, I put it on, didn't really have any other stats on it, but the fact that I was able to unlock this skill so much earlier meant that I was just leap slamming around, stomping mobs down really quick, and it was a lot of fun to do that. So a lot of the items I've been finding, and there's a pretty good amount of like purples and stuff that drop that are pretty good, and yeah, overall I'm pretty impressed. As I said, a very basic overall, but still pretty nice itemization system that's in the actual game. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was the actual hero skills. Now just to be clear, there's a pretty huge roster of heroes. There's something like 22 or 24 heroes in the actual game, and each one of these heroes has 3 separate skill trees, and I've also heard the developers say that they plan on increasing on that. So just in terms of sheer numbers, that's a lot of different skills. However, having played around with Iron Man, and this could be different for different characters, I'm going to have a look at Spider-Man a little later on, but just only having played with Iron Man so far, although some of the skills are really good and really fun to use, there seems to be a lot of overlap, and some of the skills I don't think are very imaginative. So for example, you've got the basic attack with Iron Man. You can next in the line of those sorts of things is like an attack that slows, and then the next one after that is also an attack that slows. It's like almost the exact same thing. You know, it's got like a chance to disrupt or something on it as well, but very, you know, not really exciting in terms of differences there. I'm also finding there's a lot of this skill is just flat out better than this previous skill. So because it's also the D2 style of Diablo 2 style of skill system, that means you're either choosing to save up points because you actually only want the better skills further down the track, or that you're spending points on skills that you aren't even going to be able to use in the future, or that you won't want to use in the future, or you're just spending skills in skill points in random places. Now overall, in terms of action RPG skill trees, I kind of dislike this system for that, because I feel compelled to try and make the best and most efficient character I can, and then, you know, saving all these points and not being able to spend them in the early game because I want to save them later so I can spend them on the better skills, means that in the early game I'm kind of just walking around with crappy level 1 skills, and it kind of makes it less satisfying to actually play. So the skill system, not great, but they did have said that they're extending it, so it could get better in the future. So with those being my thoughts on skills, a natural transition from there is to actually talk about the actual combat in the game. Combat is a bit of a mixed bag. Some of it's really good, like some of the skills feel really good, like this leap slam ability I was using as Iron Man felt really good. Some of his secondary attacks feel really good. His normal attack just feels terrible, and I think this is going to, you know, vary a lot. By some characters going to just have really bad feeling abilities, and other ones going to have really, you know, good feeling ones. And the actual combat itself is not too bad. Kind of, you know, repetitive, but you get that in action RPGs. My biggest gripe with the control system and the combat is that if you click and hold to move and then release your click button, you know, you release the mouse, your character will stop on the spot. They won't continue to where you actually released. So that means you have to spam click if you want to actually move around without your character stopping sort of randomly on the spot. It's kind of hard to explain, but pretty much every other action RPG I've played has used the system where if you click and hold and then release your mouse, your character will continue running to where you've released the mouse. Why change that formula? Like, the action RPG formula for that sort of movement system is very well drilled into action RPG players' minds. Maybe people who haven't played action RPGs and this is their first action RPG will be able to get used to it really easy, but as an experienced action RPG gamer, I've said that quite a lot now, it's a kind of a really frustrating movement system. So that actually makes combat feel really unresponsive, I feel. Overall, in terms of latency and stuff, I've had a few like weird sort of things in combat where I'm getting hit with stuff not, you know, kind of standard what you'd expect from MMO, but not overall not that bad, especially since it's in beta currently. So you may remember that at the start I mentioned this was an MMO action RPG. So what are the actual MMO elements in this game? Well, the first thing is that either in town, so in the like the hero tower sort of zone, there's all the other heroes there and they stand around that, and you can chat to them in local chat and things like that. So that's pretty standard MMO fare there. The next thing is that when you're actually in these sort of larger, I guess, outside hub zones, so there'll be like instances, doors that connect out of these zones, but it's overall one large zone, and there's lots of combat going on in there, and there's even world events which are like enemy heroes that you get to fight together. I'll put some footage on the screen of that, where all of these just random heroes that aren't in a party can get together and fight that out. And that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool just running along and seeing, like, you know, a couple of heroes fighting together and you guys are sort of naturally drawn together as you're killing stuff. Or like I remember I bumped into one other Iron Man who was wearing a different suit and kind of stand back to back shooting enemies and stuff like that. Just cool little moments like that sort of come out of it. So overall that's pretty exciting. And then from that you can fairly easily form parties to actually go into the smaller instances to go and do your quests and things like that. So before I give you guys my final opinions and overview, I just want to talk about the microtransaction system in the game. So obviously it is free to play. You can download the game once it actually releases and jump in free. And I think you get to pick either one or two heroes from a smaller roster of heroes, like starter heroes. From that you can buy like these packs to get extra heroes, or you can even unlock heroes through the games as rare drops, or I believe by saving up currency in-game to be able to get heroes or something like that. So there is the potential that everything that you can buy can also be achieved just through actual gameplay in terms of like heroes and stuff like that. Costumes can be crafted, but they can also be bought through the microtransaction store. And the only other thing that can be bought is like sort of these power-ups, so experience increases, gold find increases, or money find increases, or whatever, and like some actual, I think there's one other power-up, I can't quite remember what it does, but some sort of minor gameplay enhancement sort of power-ups and things like that. But overall, it feels like a pretty good free-to-play sort of system, mostly cosmetic, and then the hero roster sort of thing. So it lets you get into the game with a couple of these starter heroes, play around with it, feel if you actually, if you like the actual gameplay itself, and then if you do, you can say, I really want to grab Iron Man, so I'm gonna just lay out a few dollars and pick up just Iron Man, and you can do that right from the very beginning if you want. So overall, not too intrusive, and it seems like a pretty good system so far. So now, my actual final opinions on the game. Now, so I've played for quite a few hours, and I guess there's some good systems in there, some good skills. Overall, I said I was pretty impressed with the itemization, which is important. A bit of letdown, you can't see stuff on your characters when you equip it, but that's just sort of what happens when you bring a Heroes game together with an action RPG. So I guess, even given all that, I just don't feel very compelled to keep continuing to go too much further. I'm going to take Iron Man further. I'm going to play Spider-Man because you start off with 2000 G in this sort of weekend thing that I'm playing in at the moment, and I was able to buy Spider-Man. I'm going to play around with him as well because I really want to do that. I'm a big fan of Spider-Man. But yeah, I don't feel super compelled to go on. The gameplay's pretty repetitive. It's kind of slow. The combat doesn't feel great. I'm not inspired by the skill system, which is usually one of the things that carries me through action RPGs, makes me want to, get further and progress so I can unlock these different skill synergies. But it just doesn't feel like there's these skill synergies in the game, because a lot of the skills are either just, they overlap or they don't connect well together, at least with Iron Man for us. So as I said, it could be different with other characters. But overall, it just doesn't feel super exciting or super compelling. I think for a free-to-play game, it's definitely going to be worth checking out and trying, at least for a few hours. It's going to cost you just the time to download it, basically, and you can have a play around with the starter heroes with actual no financial commitment, and the stuff that's in it seems okay so far, and I think there's a good potential for it to be improved. But I don't know what they can do about just making it feel more compelling. Maybe if they add a lot more depth to the skill system, but I just don't think it's going to be something that's going to happen. I think instead they're going to be focusing on having a wide roster of heroes that you can play around with, a wide roster of costumes for those heroes, and allow people to get together and hang out, being their favourite heroes and stuff like that, and get enjoyment out of that. But for an action RPG gamer, myself, who has Path of Exile to play if I want a lot of depth, or Diablo 3 to play if I want to really just explode stuff and feel like a god, I don't see where Marvel Heroes fits into that, and don't feel super compelled to continue with it too much. But we'll see. Maybe I'll bring you guys some more footage and content on the game in the future, and maybe my thoughts will change a little bit as I get some more deeply into some of the systems. Anyway, if any of you guys have played the game at all and been tinkering around with the beta, I'd love to hear your comments in the comments below. That's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.